I was heavily involved in hang gliding for over 25 years. During that time, I was a hang gliding instructor, a test pilot, a harness designer, tandem pilot. I even had a paraglider rating. For my last 10 years, I worked in the Los Angeles area, and I was surrounded by students from the highest levels of flight design and analytics. I had students from AeroVironment, JPL, Lockheed, Northrop, etc., etc. These were very well educated and intelligent people that were also very analytical. I also worked with and helped several of the hang gliding manufacturers, equipment designers, the HGMA, and harness designers. We learned a great deal about flying, and I especially learned a great deal about training and flying technique as it related to training. As a quick example, I really wanted to teach my students to be good at launching a hang glider. One of my better students, thanks Steve, was also a video aficionado. I had him film hundreds of hang glider launches all over the US during hang gliding competitions, daily flying, national fly-ins, you name it, he filmed them all. We then created one single huge video of just launches, one after the other. I put a number on each launch, and then I brought several pilots and spectators together to watch the entire thing. Their job was to write down the number of every launch that seemed to them the best. Then, using the list they created, I made another video, and I had them watch and record the best of those launches. Once that was done, I now had a video of what was considered the best 20 or so launches from the several hundred we started with. I then asked myself the question, what made them the best? What was it about them that was so special that they made it on the list? I spent several days analyzing every aspect of those few launches. I played them over and over and over. I looked at what the pilot did with their feet and legs, what they did with each finger on each hand during launch, where they were looking, how fast they accelerated, and how fast they were moving at the point of takeoff. And most importantly, what happened with the glider's pitch and roll during their launches. I had an idea. I took a sheet of paper, covered the pilot's body, and watched just the glider during each launch. And I immediately became aware of a common characteristic that each launch shared. They were boring. There was no change in pitch or roll during the launch. The pilot set the pitch based on the conditions and the slope, and then launched with that preset pitch without change. Of course, the wings were always level throughout the launch. But there was no movement in pitch. The pitch angle didn't start out too low, causing excess running to launch with unnecessary extra speed, or too high of an angle of attack that caused either a need for a correction while running or too slow of a takeoff. The pilot read the conditions, the change in slope, set the glider pitch properly, and then smoothly pushed the glider into the air. Once I understood that, I also analyzed what happened with the feet, the legs, the arms, hands, and body position used in those launches, and I started training with those techniques in mind. I had my students watch the perfect launch video, and we tried to create a mental picture in their mind of what they needed to do with their launches. They learned how to see the wind, read the day for the strength, gust, thermal activity, crosswind components, how to read the conditions they would encounter during their launch parcel, and especially how to know when to launch so that there was no wind surprises during the launch run. Foot placement, setting the pitch properly, acceleration speed, what to do with each finger of the hand during the launch and when, how to launch without unnecessary motion or control inputs. After each launch, we would discuss what went well with that launch and what didn't. That was just one example of our learning technique over 20 years of hang gliding. Every once in a while, I watch a YouTube video about hang gliding. I've also spoken to a few hang gliding instructors, and I've seen the current state of hang gliding. I realize that the sport has declined a great deal since its heyday, especially in numbers, but I had hoped that instruction techniques, harness design, would have continually gotten better as the years went by. But for some reason it doesn't seem so. Certainly harness materials have improved, but the designs, not so much. and training techniques seem to have also stagnated or even declined. Anyway, I'm going to produce this 3-video series all at once here. These videos are free to anyone that wants to improve their technique. In the interest of safety, I feel it's important to get this information out there. In the first section, I'll cover the equipment and the setup of that equipment necessary to achieve flight excellence. In the second section, I will cover how to land a hang glider. And in the third and last section, I will cover how to launch a hang glider. Hopefully this helps keep the sport moving forward. Again, this material is free for any instructor, school, or pilot to use as they wish. As a bonus, I will also add a section at the end on wire crew techniques to be used in stronger wind conditions. Be advised, every pilot's responsible for themselves and the things that they try to do to learn. All right, here we go. The helmet. As hang glider pilots, we work in micrometeorology. We launch and land from our feet, and this limit means that we need to be very aware of the conditions around us. Anything that subtracts from our ability to read and be aware of the conditions is a bad idea. Simple logic. We need to be able to feel the wind speed, the gustiness, or warmth as thermals roll through. We use our face, eyes, and ears to do this. Our equipment should be chosen to enhance that ability, not reduce it. Anything that removes or lessens this ability is harmful and leaves us at the mercy of the current conditions that we aren't aware of. Whenever I see a pilot with a full face helmet, without ear holes, and a complete visor covering their eyes and face, I cringe. How is it possible for that person to ever be aware of conditions at the level necessary that we need as pilots? I'm not a helmet designer, but how do these get approved? If I can't see, feel, or hear every subtle aspect of the wind, how can I achieve safety or excellence as a pilot? It would be an impossible task. In my school, we used a full-face helmet with no visor and exposed ear holes so our pilots could see, hear, and read the conditions properly. We wore flight glasses, no visors. Regarding harnesses, you must have a harness that holds you fully upright with no effort on your part. Your legs must be free to move without restrictions. You need to be able to run, after all. The harness should rock upright with little effort and then hold you there with no effort at all on your part. You can't have pressure in your hands trying to hold yourself upright while trying to decide when to flare, or you'll repeatedly get it wrong. From an instructor's point of view, a training harness that mirrors the prone harness is very important. The harness I designed has continuous internal webbing. The configuration is exactly the same, the training harness and the prone harness. My training harness also protects the student's front and pelvic area in case of a bad landing, but the back was open to keep the student cool in hot weather. It was very lightweight and easy to put on with one simple snap on the side. Both prone and training harnesses hold the pilot upright with no pressure in their hands, and their feet and legs are able to move freely, no restrictions. This also makes the transition to the prone harness fairly simple when the student is ready to make that transition. Training with a harness that is very different from the prone harness later is just bad planning. I can give those harness design concepts to anyone that wants them. A few other harness notes. No prone harness should have the parachute mounted on the side. That is a recipe for a broken upper arm in a bad landing. I always thought a great place for the parachute would be inside, over the curve of the small of the back. Everything should be inside. Radio, water, bags, oxygen, flares, smoke bombs, parachute, and the bridle. Everything. The harness should be streamlined as possible. The parachute bridle should be totally enclosed. Leaving 3 to 4 inches exposed somewhere is just as bad as leaving the entire thing at the mercy of the sun and sand and abrasion. As pilots, we represent the greatest amount of drag in the system. Hang gliders are very slippery. So we should also be able to rotate head down so that we can match the glide slope, especially for those long glides trying to get to a safe landing or the next thermal. Regarding strength, my continuous webbing started in front of the stomach, went around the leg, up to the carabiner, back down the other side and around that leg, and then back to the buckle in front of the stomach. One piece of 20,000-pound test webbing. No junctions or seams anywhere to fail. True continuous webbing. The harness should also rotate up, not slide down. First, be sure your leg loops are snug. But if getting you upright means that your harness allows you to slide down several inches, and then you're hanging higher up on your back but lower in the control frame, that is not rotating up. When you're higher in the control frame, several positive things happen. First, you have more control of the glider as you can move farther from each side if necessary. Second, being higher in the control frame means that your hands are closer to your shoulders, giving you a huge amount of flair for safer landings. Third, if you do have a bad landing, the control frame takes a greater amount of the hit, as you are more inside of it and not dragging your body across the ground. And your hands being the center of the down tubes makes it easier to break them to absorb some of the impact. I always taught my students, if you realize that you're going to crash, try to break as much of the glider as possible. Gliders are fixable. People, not so much. Never stick your arm or leg out to save yourself. Just break the glider. There's only so much impact to go around. Let the glider absorb as much of it as possible, not you. The glider. Hang gliders have a few very specific speeds that they fly. VNE is the speed never to exceed, written on that HGMA sticker on your keel. The next slower speed is best glide speed, or best LD speed. This gets you the greatest distance over the ground. The next slowest is the minimum sink speed. This is the speed at which the glider loses altitude the slowest. Below that is what we call the mush speed. Portions of the glider are beginning to stall, but the glider is still flying, but sinking very rapidly with very little energy. Below that, the entire glider finally stalls, rotates the nose drastically downward, picks up speed, and begins flying again. Stall speed occurs at a specific airspeed, around 15 miles per hour usually. You need your glider trimmed at minimum sink speed. This makes for a good resting position in flight. It's also a speed that is close to your landing speed, which helps a lot. Once you have the proper helmet, harness, and the glider set up properly, you are ready to start learning to land properly. If you're already a mountain pilot, fly on an absolutely calm day, and with enough altitude, get upright in your harness, allow the glider to fly along at trim speed, and notice the bar position in relationship to your body, and the airspeed you're both feeling and hearing. You should have no pressure in your hands. Any motion of the bar in or out from this position should cause an increase in sink rate. That ensures you're at minimum sink. Once your hands are up on the down tubes across from your shoulders, note the distance from your shoulders to your hands. Now push out slightly, adding pressure into your palms. Your sink rate should increase and your airspeed should decrease. Try to determine where mush is. The pressure in your palms will be significant and your sink rate will increase a lot. Sometimes you get buffeting, but a dramatic drop in wind noise. Note your airspeed, bar position, distance your hands are from your body, how much pressure is in your palms, and the sound the glider is making as it goes through the air. This lets you know you are at the right place for mush speed. If you push out any more, the glider will begin to stall. Hang gliders stall at a specific airspeed. This is important because during landing, if you flare too early or too late, you will hit the ground at that speed, usually too fast for you to run and save the glider from a whack. Okay, you've got your equipment sorted. Now you're ready to put it into use to learn to land properly. Okay, before I go into the next video, the next portion of the video, and to save some time dealing with the negative comments, let me add this. I worked in hang gliding for over 20 years and amassed every rating hang gliding had to offer. I was a Hang 5 master with all sign-offs, tandem instructor. I had instructor certification programs, national level meet director, national fly-in representative. I was an HCMA test pilot, new model test pilot, Yosemite National Park hang gliding ranger, etc., etc. I owned my own hang gliding school, and I had a harness company that sold all over the world. One of the greatest privileges was my Hang 5 master rating, signed by Bill Bennett himself before he died. He is one of the founding fathers of hang gliding along with Bill Moyes. I have a lot of experience. I don't expect these videos to be exhaustive in their respective topics, but they will cover what I feel are the basic tenets of each, and I hope they help. Okay, this section in the series is about the hang glider landing. How do you properly and safely land a hang glider? Here's the secret to landing a hang glider that must be understood if you ever hope to master this skill. Landing is a climbing maneuver, not descending. Think about every no-wind, no-step landing you've ever seen. The pilot skims along the ground, aggressively pushes up, climbs a few feet, comes to a complete stop, and then settles softly to earth. Landing is a climbing maneuver. Your goal is to flare with enough airspeed to climb up, come to a complete stop in the air, and descend vertically downward slowly to a soft no-step landing. This is especially important in no-wind and downwind landings. You need to flare when the glider has enough energy. That is usually at or near mush speed on almost every glider ever made. You need to memorize where the down tubes are in relationship to your shoulders when it's time to flare, how much palm pressure you have, how much energy the glider still has, and the sound of your declining airspeed. Those criteria are the basis for every landing on that glider. Because every glider is different, when I worked as a test pilot and I had the height, I slowed every glider down and determined where those parameters were in preparation for landing. I needed to know bar position, pressure, sound, energy, etc. to properly land that glider for the first time, especially if it was trimmed at the wrong speed. If you flare too early, the glider will climb too high, stall, and fall back to earth at stall speed or faster, depending on how high you were, and stall speed again 15 miles an hour or so, descending at a very steep angle while rotating the nose down. Usually you cannot save it. You will fall, break some down tubes, and whack. That's flaring too early. What about flaring too late? Pretty much the same thing. You will stall the glider, the nose will drop and accelerate, you will not be able to keep up with it, you'll fall down and whack at least. Okay, let's start with the pilot on final approach, or one that just launched from the training hill. Once you're on final, with wings level, always increase speed and get on the deck to allow for wind gradient, gusts, and turbulence. Get the glider on the deck with extra airspeed. The closer to the ground you get, the less effect the turbulence can have on you, and you'll be in ground effect. If you can, check your height off the ground by reaching down with one of your toes and feel for the grass as you skim along. If you can't reach the ground with your toe, you're too high. Be careful of rocks or roots that may damage your foot. You need to flare when there's enough energy to climb to a perfect stop in the air, but also be close enough to the ground to get your feet down before the radical stall occurs. You don't want to climb too high. That is why I touch the grass with my toes if I can. You need to be close to the ground when you flare. Here's a quick side note on rotating upright for landing. You get upright either before you accelerate to get on the deck or after you bleed off all your extra speed and you've slowed down to minimum sink and have no pressure in your hands. These are the times with no pressure in your hands that you can come upright during flight and safely let go of the base tube. If you take a hand off the base tube while pulling in a lot, you will get into a turn just when you don't want it. It's possible to come upright during a slight turn once you're making the correction on the deck. During a correction, whatever hand is not correcting the turn has no pressure in it, and you can bring that hand up to the down tube. Then rotate upright and bring the other hand up once the turn is corrected. Be sure to steer with your hips. Don't rotate your body or use your shoulders to correct a turn. Your CG is at your hips. Once on the deck with extra airspeed and you're upright in your harness, begin easing the bar out at whatever rate keeps you on the deck. All the pressure is still in your fingers. You let the bar out too fast, you rise up. Too slow, and you descend into the ground. The conditions and glider performance will dictate whatever rate you need to let the bar out. The goal is to stay level, close to the ground. While you are doing this, you will have pressure only in your fingers, which is continuously decreasing as you slow down. When you've let the bar out far enough, you are now at minimum sink. The pressure in your fingers goes away completely, and for the first time in your landing, the pressure now switches to your palms. Now you'll need to push the bar out, again at whatever rate keeps you close to the ground, until you feel the proper amount of pressure in your palms, the proper bar position in relationship to your body and your shoulders, the proper amount of glider energy, you hear the proper wind speed. Time to flare. Aggressively push up, not out, up. Remember, landing is a climbing maneuver. You push up to accomplish that, not out. Whenever I hear an instructor scream, push out, it always makes me cringe. You don't push out. As you push up, reach backward with your feet. You want as much weight as possible to move aft to get the glider to stop. The natural motion of the aggressive stop will always swing your feet back under you before touchdown. Don't swing your feet forward when you flare. The glider will climb aggressively, but will only have enough energy left to climb a very short distance, come to a complete stop, settle down vertically, catch your weight on your feet, and then the glider onto your shoulders. Congratulations, you just made a no-step landing. You need to ignore the ground until this moment. If you're in a slight downwind and you've stopped completely in the air, you can easily walk out once you get the glider stopped and you get close to the ground. Okay, here's the criteria again. You need a helmet that allows you to both hear, feel, and see the slightest change in the wind and airspeed. You especially need a harness that rocks and holds you upright with no pressure whatsoever in your hands, and allows you total freedom of movement in your legs. You need a glider trimmed at minimum sink so that you always know exactly where you are in regards to airspeed during landing. Remember, landing is a climbing maneuver. I'll add one advanced technique here. On a thermally gusty day, as I fly over the landing field, I look for streamers, leaves, smoke, anything I can to assist me in my landing. If I see a nice parcel of air moving along the field, I may rush my approach, speed up, and then try to land inside that parcel. What I don't want to do is fly out the backside of a thermal or parcel of air just as I'm about to flare for landing and suddenly lose all my energy and my airspeed. I actively watch the signals below me, and I'm always looking for a nice parcel of air to land in. That is way more important to me than crashing on the bullseye. One final note. I always get asked by my students, well, how hard should I flare? You flare hard enough to match the wind speed and achieve zero ground speed. Just enough to come to a stop over the ground. In 30 knots of headwind, you pull in on the glider to stop and land. In 5 knots of headwind, you push up just enough to get 5 knots of airspeed. In a no or downwind situation, you flare all the way. You try to stop the glider in the air. The flare amount must match the headwind you're landing in, so flare accordingly. Now you know what to do. Go out there and practice. Okay, next. How do you launch a hang glider? We've all seen launches that look good to us. What is it that makes us feel, when watching these launches, that they're being executed safely and properly? In one phrase, it is simply pitch control. When watching just the glider, nothing changes. No wandering of pitch and roll while the launch is being performed, just a smooth transition into the air. Launch technique that allows the pitch of the glider to wander makes us all cringe, while smooth launches, executed properly, are pleasant to watch. After several thousand of my own launches and meticulously viewing thousands more live and video launches over and over, I have distilled the launch sequence into these steps. Prior to launch, be sure to have a good handle on the conditions at launch, in the area of your launch run itself, and also know what you will encounter during the first few seconds after liftoff. Watching the thermal and wind cycles for a while before launch will give you a good feel for what you can expect. Wind will almost always follow readable patterns. Don't allow yourself to be surprised by conditions during your launch run, and don't pick up your glider until you're sure of the conditions you're getting ready to launch into. Your first priority is to define the parcel of air you want to launch in. Hopefully that parcel is consistent and will last long enough to complete your launch. Whatever that parcel is, you don't want to change in direction, speed, gusts, etc. during your launch. Installing lots of streamers in front of, above, and off to the sides is a good idea for both launch and landing practice. The more information, the better. Of course, they don't do much good if the pilot doesn't watch them for a decent period of time so that they can start to predict the cycles. It is important also that the glider monitors the streamers during their launch or landing for any unexpected changes. If the pilot sees a change in the streamers out in front of them during their launch run or into their landing, they can react and make a quick change to modify their pitch before the change affects the process. Our main goal during this time is to never be surprised. Be vigilant. By the time your glider is set up, you should have a very good idea of what is happening with the wind and should be able to predict things fairly well. Once all criteria above are identified and patterned, you should be able to time your launch properly without surprises. Get into position and wait for the correct time for the launch parameters you need. Set the glider on the ground, do a hang check, be sure everything is in good order. This is a hang check where you look to see that all straps and lines are in order, carabiners locked, and you're hanging the right height, approximately 1 fist above the base tube. This pre-launch harness check must be done every time. This would complete the static portion of the launch. Preparation. Now, wait for the conditions you want. When your conditions show up, use the proper grip. The handshake grip is too awkward and weak at the beginning. You need to use your shoulders, arms, and hands to control the glider properly, especially if there's wind and turbulence. Wedge your shoulders, wrap your arms, lay your palms flat against the down tubes, placing the down tubes usually between your middle and pointer finger. This is the worldwide accepted method. When the time is right, you bend down and look at your hang loops and carabiner, and then pick up the glider. Even if you just did a hang check a minute ago, don't ask somebody, check it yourself. Bending down to look at your hang loops and carabiner just before you pick up the glider is part of the launch itself. It's the first step to every launch. Number one, always. If you do this every time, it's impossible to launch unhooked. Pick your launch parcel, bend down, look at your hang loops and carabiner, face the glider directly into the wind, and pick it up. If you pick it up crosswind, it will not come up level and sometimes dig a wingtip into the ground, maybe bending a batten. Get the wings level with the horizon, not the slope. Set your feet shoulder width apart, but 1 foot in front of the other, and have your weight on the back foot. This is important because you can now shift your weight from your back foot to your front foot to start your launch. You get the glider moving smoothly before you've even taken any steps. Do this motion at whatever rate you can without changing the preset pitch angle. If you rush it, the nose pops up. It doesn't matter how fast you start your launch. It matters how fast you finish your launch run. Set the pitch for the slope and the conditions, and your ability to accelerate while maintaining that pitch. Too high of a pitch angle will inhibit your acceleration, cause you to launch without enough airspeed, or cause you to lift off too soon. Too low will cause you to run too far, maybe never lift off, and possibly stumble and fall during launch. You avoid all of these things by setting the pitch properly at the beginning of the launch and then maintaining it throughout the launch. Start smoothly. If you read and timed the conditions correctly, it's time to launch. If you were wrong, put the glider down. Wait for the conditions you're looking for. Don't stand there holding the glider for 5 minutes. Put it down. Someone standing at launch holding the glider for a really long time has not done their homework, and they're risking a bad launch full of surprises. Never ever allow someone to tell you when to launch, ever. This is your responsibility, and if it goes wrong, only you will suffer the consequences. Anyone trying to push you is in the wrong just because they're trying. Ignore them or tell them to shut up. This completes the static portion of the launch. Now, You want to start accelerating by shifting your weight from your back foot to your front foot, pushing the glider through the air with your shoulders, controlling the pitch with your hands before even taking a step. Your shoulders, however, are below the glider and forward of its center of gravity. So you need to counter this shoulder push by holding in the proper amount with your hands and arms as you are pushing and leaning forward to run. Again, you're maintaining your preset pitch while smoothly accelerating the glider. Don't try to start out too quickly. Accelerate at whatever speed you can achieve while maintaining the preset pitch. If you try to go too fast, the pitch will wander. Remember, how fast you finish your launch is critical, not how fast you start it. Be smooth and in control. Start slow, finish fast. Work on being smooth. Now this is the phase where most bad launch technique will show itself. The slope is steeper than the glider's glide angle, so the glider will eventually lift off your shoulders. Actually, you're dropping underneath it as you run, but once your shoulders separate from the down tubes, and before the harness straps get tight enough to exhibit any control, the only thing touching the glider is your hands, which are well below and in front of the glider's center of gravity. If you push or lift to try to accelerate the glider during this phase, the nose will come up. The angle of attack will rise, the glider will slow. Conversely, if you hold down or in too much on the down tubes, the angle of attack will actually be lowered and the glider will accelerate too fast, you might even be able to keep up with it. Since you are accelerating the glider into the air, you need to hold down and in just the right amount to maintain your preset angle of attack while you run underneath it. Your shoulders will go forward between the down tubes. Again, when the glider lifts off your shoulders, you control the pitch rate as it lifts off and its acceleration rate by holding down and in with your hands just the right amount to maintain the preset pitch angle and keep things accelerating smoothly until the straps finally become tight. Don't allow or make the pitch angle wander during this phase. Your hand grip initially will seem a little odd, but you'll actually need very little pressure down and in to control pitch and continue acceleration during this phase. Keep your pointer finger in front of the down tube. You can now rotate one hand at a time into a typical handshake grip on the down tubes up to near your shoulders. It will soon become natural as concentrating on your priority, maintaining pitch angle while accelerating the glider, keeping the glider balanced and stable. Very important, special note. During this phase, a wing that starts dropping is fixed by moving under that wing and lifting it up. Later, you can move weight under the high wing to pull it down, but until then, you must move under the low wing and literally lift it if you need to get the glider level. Okay, this completes getting the straps tight, phase 3 of the launch. Once you've separated far enough from the glider and the harness straps get tighter and tighter, you now have a weight shift controlled system and can start flying the glider off the ground. The more of your weight the glider carries during the launch, the more effective this will be. Pulling in, pushing out, or moving your CG side to side will now result in pitch and roll changes based on weight control. Again, your goal is to maintain your preset angle while accelerating smoothly into the air. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Remember, you fly where you look. Use peripheral vision to watch the glider's pitch, but rotate your head quickly side to side to check the wings to make sure they're level and there's no crosswind component. Continue to smoothly accelerate while controlling your pitch, roll, and yaw. And you now run the glider into the air. At some point, it will have enough airspeed to lift all of your weight and your feet are off the ground. There's no need to run in the air. It accomplishes nothing. Listen to your airspeed as you run. You will start to recognize when you have the right amount of airspeed. A helmet that allows you to hear this airspeed is a great benefit here. Your ears work best to listen for airspeed when they can hear the air as it flows past them. You're now flying. If executed correctly, there is no need to drastically accelerate at this point. Simply maintain good control and fly away from the hill to gain some altitude. If you're going prone, carefully and smoothly, change your hands one at a time to the base tube and step into your harness. Don't forget, flying the glider is your first responsibility. The hand change and harnesses that's secondary, and there's little reason to rush. As you become more proficient, this phase will become quick and smooth But let that happen on its own with experience and airtime. Practicing this maneuver, the handshakes and stepping into the harness, in a simulator over and over and over until it becomes second nature and can be done without even thinking about it is very wise. Zip in later, not important. Okay, this completes the third phase of launch, getting the system into the air. Smooth launches quickly demonstrate pilot proficiency. You need to leave the ground with enough airspeed for safety, but no more. The conditions and your skill level will dictate how much that is. As you become more proficient at launching and reading conditions, you will know exactly how much airspeed is necessary and will not launch with too much or too little. Both are contrary to proper controlled launch technique. Initially, most pilots launch with a little extra airspeed for safety. These are the steps to properly launch a hang glider smoothly and safely. Now practice, practice, fly safe, be smooth. Okay, I mentioned a special bonus. Here it is. Wire crew techniques. Let's get this out of the way. Yelling clear just before or during your takeoff is almost worthless. If you've never checked to be sure your wingtips were indeed clear, and you never gave anyone that is in the way time to get clear, it accomplishes very little or nothing. If you're going to yell clear, which is a silly thing to do without checking, actually check. Both wingtips, everything's clear, both sides in front of you. Anything your wings may hit during launch. Then, if it is clear, start your takeoff. If you need a wire crew, and only if you need one, it means that conditions are beyond your ability to safely handle. The last thing you need is a bad wire crew to stress you or get you killed. Be sure to train your wire crew with exact instructions before you launch, before you even go to launch. Be sure your wire crew understands and is willing to follow your orders without question or discussion. Do not hesitate to replace anyone that refuses to do this. If they think they're an expert, have a different idea of how things should go, etc., just replace them. Never allow someone to say, well, that's not how we do it here. If they have a system, listen to it and decide. But I don't care how they do it. If you use the system in this video, now is the time to teach them how to do it properly. There are specific reasons for each and every step, and it's very well thought out. The last thing you need to do in strong conditions is to try to learn new techniques, especially something that as a pilot you're not familiar with. You run the wire crew. They must do exactly what you say when you say it. This is touchy at times, but you must be firm. In the past, I have said the conditions today are very strong and gusty. It's not a really good time for me to try to learn a new technique. Please just do as I say. No one should ever expect someone to learn a new technique in a tough launch situation. If they do, they need to be replaced. Often a complete novice or spectator is the best wire crew helper. I've used them hundreds of times instead of the local expert that won't listen to me or do as I say. Stick to your guns. No one will die here but you if it goes wrong. You have to be in charge. I would much rather have someone that knows nothing help me than some expert that won't do what I want. These techniques can and should be practiced on flat ground or in the setup area while waiting for conditions to improve. Get comfortable with the system, have your wire crew comfortable with the system before trying it for real. First, never allow anyone to touch your wing, the tubes, or the sail. Never allow anyone to hold your keel at the tail. They must be holding just the side wires or just the nose wire. That's it. These are the wire crew instructions. Be sure everyone understands and is willing to follow them. If you can control the pitch, choose 2 wire crew on the wings and have each one stand behind your side wire. The side wire crew must hold the wire up near the cross tube junction. They need to hold the side wire with all fingers kept straight on top of the wire and the thumb held straight below the wire, as though they're trying to point all fingers and thumb in the direction of launch. Do not allow them to hold the wire in a fist. If their fingers and thumb are straight and they're not paying attention and you launch, the wire will just pull out of their hand instead of putting you in a severe turn just at launch. Also, when you look over at the side wire, you can tell if it's pressing against their fingers or their thumb. You can see what's going on. This lets you know exactly what each wing is doing. It's hard to do that if they have the wire held in a fist. Instruct the side wire men to give constant feedback of up, neutral, or down, telling you what the wing is doing, not what they're doing. It will sound chaotic at first with two people talking at once, but when both men are saying the same thing at the same time, it's easy to read. You want them both saying up or neutral for launch. When you feel good about the conditions, you say clear in a very decisive voice. Don't yell, but be sure everyone hears you. The side wire men then let go of the wire completely, but stay where they are, and they say clear back to you to let you know that they have indeed let go of your wire. Do not trust them. Look at both wing wires to be sure they have indeed let go. Many times I've looked over and someone still has their hand on the wire. They always say, yeah, but I wasn't doing anything. That's not the point. If it happens, clearly say help and start over. When ready, the conditions are easily handled by you. Say clear, loudly and distinctly, but then do nothing. First, check both sides of the wings in front to be sure it's clear. Then if everyone is indeed clear and your entire launch path is clear, you were right about the conditions, launch under control. If you were wrong about your launch, conditions, or whatever, yell help. That's why the wire crew needs to stay in place behind the wires until you're safely away. They should still be there, and will simply reach out and take hold of the wire in hand, start the process over. If it is strong enough to need a nose man, his instructions are to raise or lower the nose to help set the pitch for the conditions. He holds you during severe gusts, but you need to pick a parcel where he's not needed. Then you say, clear nose. He ducks under the wing where you told him to go during the instructions. He does not go around the end of the wing. That takes too long, and you may end up hitting him with a wingtip during launch, with disastrous results for you both. He goes under the wing you designated, under the wire. When he's behind the wire, he yells, nose man clear, but stays next to that side wire man, ready to come back to your aid if quickly needed. If all is well, you then say, clear side wires, wait for their response, check them both quickly, and if all is good, launch. It can be done literally in 1 or 2 seconds. Never use words like no or go. They can easily be confused with each other. I heard a pilot once yell no, which was misunderstood by the wire crew as go. Everyone let go at once, instantly creating a bad ending for the pilot and his glider. Once you're ready to launch and facing the wind properly, you say only 2 words, clear or help, nothing else. Again, your wire crew must truly understand and agree with the instructions before you go to launch. I have sent several people away through the years, or just replaced them. This is a time to be stern and direct and not a nice guy. Be polite and say, I don't feel comfortable with you helping me, and replace them. It's not a negotiation. Your life literally depends on it, especially on a cliff or a very steep launch. Practice this until you perfect it before you ever need it. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. Again, anybody that has any questions, leave them down below. I hope that you can use this material and become a great pilot. Go flying.